On this Thursday night, it's game on in a cross-border trade dispute. Canada hits back against U.S. tariffs as a defiant prime minister explains Canada's retaliatory measures. We look at the possible impacts on business in this country and on you. Plus, why Donald Trump is picking this fight in the first place.
Also tonight, a second opinion from Canadian doctors why the IUD should now be the contraceptive of choice for teenage girls.
And a popular Canadian comedian takes her attack on Ivanka Trump exactly one word too far. Why Samantha Bee and the network she works for are apologizing today, and why some people are crying double standard. This is The National.
Justin Trudeau isn't calling it a trade war yet, but you can see the battle lines being drawn in the words used on each side. What the U.S. president's top trade official calls a blip on the radar, Canada's prime minister calls deplorable. The tariffs hitting Canada as of midnight are 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. Canada will retaliate with countermeasures totaling $16.6 billion in surtaxes on American steel and aluminum, but also on a long list of other products. The prime minister appeared angry with Washington's move, which, as Katie Simpson tells us, comes at an already difficult time between the two countries.
The Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister appeared insulted that Canada's closest ally would take this kind of action.
Let me be clear. These tariffs are totally unacceptable.
Justin Trudeau lashed out at the American suggestion that any Canadian product could pose a threat to U.S. national security.
Canadians have served alongside Americans in 2 world wars and in Korea. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of Afghanistan.
Chrystia Freeland announced Canada's $16 billion retaliation plan, dollar-for-dollar tariffs on American steel and aluminum and more.
This is the strongest trade action Canada has taken in the post-war era.
Freeland's list also has non-metal items selected to inflict political consequences on U.S. lawmakers. It includes pickles from Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan's home state of Wisconsin, bourbon, since it's made in Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's home state of Kentucky, and Florida orange juice from a state which was crucial to Donald Trump's victory.
It's a very troubling day, and it's another blow to Canada's economy.
The Conservatives are frustrated with the way the Liberals have handled this situation. After Trump took office, Trudeau tried to charm the new U.S. administration to ensure amicable trade would continue between the two countries. It appears the positive pitch has not resonated with the president, leaving Trudeau to hope this new punitive measure will be heard loud and clear.
We have to believe that at some point, common sense will prevail. But we see no sign of that in this action today by the U.S. administration.
Canada's tariffs won't kick in for another month, Rosie. The government wants to consult to make sure no Canadians are inadvertently affected.
Okay, Donald Trump also said Canada and Mexico could have avoided all this if a NAFTA deal had been reached. Today, we learned something pretty interesting from the Prime Minister, Katie.
Trudeau says he reached out to Donald Trump, offering to travel to the White House to negotiate the final details of NAFTA in person. But there was a catch.
I got a call from Vice President Pence on Tuesday in which it was impressed upon me that there was a precondition to us being able to get together. That Canada would accept a sunset clause for NAFTA. I had to highlight that there was no possibility of any Canadian Prime Minister signing a NAFTA deal that included a 5-year sunset clause, and obviously the visit didn't happen.
A sunset clause would kill the trade agreement in 5 years, Rosie, and Canada and Mexico believe it would create too much instability to actually work. There are no plans for those NAFTA talks to resume, and today's developments will certainly not be welcomed by negotiators.
Katie Simpson in Ottawa tonight. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks.
And joining us now from our Washington bureau is Keith Bowe. Keith, this is a hard question, but why is this happening? What do we think is the Trump strategy here?
Well, I can tell you, Rosie, there is a great deal of skepticism here about whether there actually is a strategy. What there is a consistent and apparently genuinely held belief on the part of the president that protectionism can bring jobs back to America. You heard it over and over again in the campaign when he said the U.S. isn't treated fairly in trade agreements and that under his leadership, the U.S. would no longer be played for a sucker. And for the sake of making good on all that, he's apparently prepared to spark a tit-for-tat trade war with China, with Europe, and with Canada. And he's prepared to do that in the face of criticisms from his own advisors in the White House and Republicans on Capitol Hill who say that he's trying to turn back the clock on the complex and interrelated trade rules of the modern world and use U.S. economic might to try to bully it, even its own neighbors.
So I guess the question is, does that work? Can it work? The U.S. is a really powerful player in the world. Can it get by insulating itself and bullying its way to where it wants to go?
Well, Trump seems to think so. And so apparently does his point man on this, the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross. Here's what he said earlier about whether there was a significant downside.
These are blips in the radar screen. I don't think they change the fundamentals of relationship. Everybody has spats every now and again. Every family does, every country does with others. There's nothing weird about that. I think everybody will get over this in due course.
But there are a lot of American businesses and investors who don't think so, who say no one wins a trade war. Look at the stock market today. The Dow Jones down 250 points. That's fear of an escalating trade war. The IMF said recently the #1 threat to global economic growth is a trade war, and the U.S. would not be immune from that. In spite of low unemployment here, economic growth has been relatively modest and significantly short of what Trump has said his administration would produce. So in that sense, his actions could well be counterproductive and undermine even his own goals.
Now, Canada and Europe seem to be targeting their tariffs at industries in Trump country. Is that an effective tactic as a response?
Absolutely it is. Targeting Harley-Davidson motorcycles or Kentucky bourbon is taking the fight right to Trump's base. It's a threat to the jobs of the very people Trump promised would not be left behind. And Trump supporters who couldn't care less about things like the Russia investigation or who Ivanka Trump does business with care just as much as anybody about their jobs. And Trump, of course, has the midterm elections to worry about. They're just 6 months away.
CBC's Keith Bogan, Washington. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie.
In Canada, steel and aluminum businesses thought the threat of tariffs was just a negotiating tactic in the NAFTA talks. It may be part of that, but now they're going into effect overnight, and there will be an immediate impact. In Canada, annual steel sales amount to about $14 billion. About half of what it's produced is exported, mostly to the U.S. And as for aluminum, sales are about $12 billion a year, with more than 80% going to the U.S. So what happens now? Jacqueline Hansen spoke to many industry stakeholders today to try and find out.
Edmonton-based Alta Steel has been selling rolled steel bars like these to some customers in the U.S. for more than 20 years. Now that tariffs will make their Canadian product much more expensive, those relationships are at risk.
We're under no doubt as to how difficult it's going to be to hold these customers.
And it's not just contracts on the line. It could also be jobs.
We are going to try everything we can to offset these impacts, but clearly the threat is there.
These tariffs could seriously hurt American businesses as well. U.S. manufacturers rely heavily on Canadian steel and aluminum.
When you look at the cold numbers, the U.S. produced 700,000 tons of aluminum last year and consumed 5.5 million tons. Tomorrow, they still need that same metal. They're just going to pay more for it.
Trump's idea that more should be made in the U.S. isn't actually something America can do quickly.
They cannot ramp production in a way that would allow them to replace all the imports that come from us. There are going to be shortages.
This is the coil product which we purchase.
In Toronto, Tubular Steel makes parts for seat frames and car seat headrests. 25% of its product is sold directly to the U.S. But the company says it may have to focus on selling more elsewhere.
Unfortunately, we don't have the type of industry where we could drop our prices 25% and still be competitive.
But he's hopeful Trump's tariffs won't last long.
He has a pattern of saying big, grandiose statements and then dialing them back and using that chaos as a negotiation tactic.
As politicians try to stand up to Trump, the ripple effects could be much greater.
When we retaliate and they retaliate and others retaliate, the pawn in all this is the consumer and the producer.
What started as a tough stance on steel, experts say could end up being bad for just about everybody. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
The timing of all this is interesting. The issue is looming over economic meetings in Whistler, BC. That's where Finance Minister Bill Morneau is hosting his G7 counterparts and central bank governors, and David Cochrane is there.
They came to Whistler to talk about growth that works for everyone, but the discussion quickly became about tariffs that work for no one.
If trade is massively disrupted, if the level of trust of the economic actors amongst themselves is severely damaged, first of all, those who will suffer most are the poorest.
The reaction from British Columbia to Brussels was swift and negative.
This is a bad day for the world trade. The European Union cannot react to that without any kind of reaction, so we'll immediately introduce a settlement dispute on the WTO.
Across Europe, leaders are banding together, promising to retaliate.
I don't want to kid you. We will need to talk about this first and foremost.
And now Canada has to find common ground at this G7 finance ministers meeting and at the Leaders Summit next week in Quebec, when Donald Trump will make his first visit to Canada as president.
We're not saying there won't be frictions. We're not saying that we won't have strong words. We're not saying that we won't be able to send messages. We need to send messages saying that working together is better than working apart.
Trump's protectionism has hit nearly every member of the G7. Steel and aluminum tariffs today that hit Canada and Europe. The threat of auto import tariffs that would ensnare Japan. The G7 is supposed to be about working together, but it's quickly becoming the G6 versus the United States. David Cochrane, CBC News, Whistler.
So that's a pretty tense summit ahead. There's an emerging trade war. So that's lots to talk about tonight. And yes, we're lucky. At Issue is here. Andrew, Althea, Chantal, all standing by. We'll get into all of that and more a little later on The National.
Let's take a look at what else we're working on tonight. He says he had to do it, no matter the ethics. The Russian journalist who staged his own murder defends himself and explains how he did it.
And Samantha B says she's sorry for crossing a line after hurling a vulgar slur at Ivanka Trump.
But first, why doctors say it's time to rethink birth control. For decades, the pill has been the go-to method for preventing pregnancies in teenage girls. But in a new report, the Canadian Pediatric Society takes a very different view. Christine Birak explains why it now says intrauterine devices are the best options.
Hi, Teen Health Source. Do you have a question?
Not everyone's comfortable talking about teens having sex.
What would you like to know about contraceptives?
Either way, a growing number of young people want to better understand intrauterine devices, or IUDs.
They do come to us asking, I read this, is it true? Or just a lot of questions on IUDs.
They may be relieved to find out the Canadian Pediatric Society now says it supports the use of IUDs for teen girls as a first line of defense against pregnancy.
We're not saying you must force young people to use an IUD or an IUS. We're saying that intrauterine contraception is the most effective method of contraception, and so you should be talking about it.
And there's a lot to talk about, including the two main types. This copper coil device is an IUD. Another version that releases hormones is called an intrauterine system, or IUS. It's placed inside the uterus by a healthcare provider to prevent pregnancy for up to 10 years. The device carries a small risk of tissue perforation when inserted and cramping afterward. IUDs are the most widely used reversible contraceptive method in the world, except in North America.
In the 70s, the Dalcon Shield gave IUDs a really bad name.
Nurse practitioner Kristen Heisey knows the history,
The IUD,
including claims that early versions of the device led to infections, ectopic pregnancies, or worse. But experts say the interpretation of those studies was flawed. Complications can happen, but experts say they're uncommon.
Things have changed. The IUDs of the past are not the same IUDs that we currently use. I insert quite a few IUDs daily. It's anywhere from like a 0 to 4 a day.
Another common question we get is, can I get an IUD without my parents knowing?
The answer, yes, as long as you can show that you understand the risks. But the Canadian Pediatric Society says this is about options. Any birth control is better than none. But add, only condoms protect against sexually transmitted infections. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
For more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Danielle Martin with Women's College Hospital here in Toronto. You know what? One thing watching that story I'm curious about is, what's your sense of why this is happening now?
You know, in many ways, this is just Canada catching up to the rest of the world. The IUDs and intrauterine systems have been very popular all over the world, and particularly in Europe for a long time. And the Pediatric Society is now catching up with other groups like the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who have long recommended these long-acting reversible contraceptive methods for women of all ages.
So now it's just focusing on the teens.
Now we're focusing on the teens, and I think it's a really important population to focus on because, of course, the consequences of unintended pregnancy in teens can be devastating, not just, you know, for the young woman, but for her whole family. And so it's an important conversation for us to have.
So it's one thing for doctors to just switch a recommendation. It's something else to actually go through with it. Are doctors actually ready for this?
I mean, I think we're in varying states of readiness, to be honest. And one of the big differences between these IUDs or IUSs and the pill, which is by far the most popular form of contraceptive among young women in Canada, is that for the pill, you just have to write a prescription. But for these intrauterine versions of contraception, the doctor actually, or the healthcare provider, has to insert it. And so there is some training that is required. It's not a difficult thing to do at all, but it does require some training. And so it is, I think, going to take us some time as a medical community to catch up to this being the norm. And if we want to make sure that young women have access to these forms of contraception, I think we have to be wary of getting into patterns where young women just get referred off to see specialists, or, you know, if they're living in communities where they don't have access to clinics or their own family physician hasn't been trained to insert these devices, what does that really mean? So we do have to make sure that if we're serious about this recommendation, that we offer the access appropriately.
One last thing, very quickly, anything that worries you about this?
I worry about sexually transmitted infection. You know, teens need to understand that these hormonal forms of contraception, whether it's the IUD, IUS, whether it's the pill, do not protect against HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea. And so these are important risks. And in order to protect against that stuff, you need to use a condom.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Danielle Martin, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Well, now to a conversation of a very different sort. A U.S. culture war flying at light speed. Roseanne and her racist tweet. So yesterday. Tonight, it's Canadian Samantha Bee in the spotlight. She called the U.S. president's daughter the C word, 4 letters long. It's pretty vulgar. So, at a time when the U.S. president himself is a former TV personality with the instincts of an insult comedian, and when politics and entertainment are fused together, Joanna Remiliotis explores the line and the price of crossing it.
Ivanka Trump, who works at the White House, chose to post the second most oblivious tweet we've seen this week. You know,
in terms of shock value, it certainly hit the mark, calling the president's daughter the C word.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless c***.
Samantha Bee's rant was triggered by a photo posted by Ivanka Trump with her child. She called it oblivious, given raging controversy around U.S. immigration policy that separates undocumented children from their families.
In case you didn't realize,
and while the word is widely considered offensive, in the context of a presidency openly hostile to mainstream media, it's created a whole other firestorm. The White House denounced the language as vile and vicious, but went further, calling the collective silence by the left and its media allies appalling.
I'm not afraid of you.
Give it time. A sentiment echoed by commentators on the right, who are also quick to suggest a double standard compared to Roseanne Barr, accusing networks of hypocrisy for not taking aim at B's comments as quickly or as fiercely as they did when Barr sent a racist tweet earlier this week, prompting ABC to cancel her sitcom.
Put on something tight and low-cut.
But while Samantha Bee's comedic judgment is now under fire, so are those who are attacking her.
The White House wants this to be about media bias more broadly.
To Bee's defenders and observers on this side of the border, the comparison just falls flat.
I think the question is really about whether or not, Roseanne, who is a known racist and transphobe, should have had a show on ABC and that they continued with that. However, this is a question about comedic judgment when it comes to Samantha Bee, and I don't think the two are the same.
As for Bee, she has apologized, and her network says it also takes responsibility for airing the segment, but says it won't comment on any further action. Joanna Rumaliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Ahead tonight on The National, she thought it was junk. She even tried to give it away to a friend. Now she's $500,000 richer.
But first, there was makeup, a bullet hole-ridden wardrobe, even pig's blood. The Russian journalist who staged his own murder tells his side of the story.
And a little later, Vladimir Putin's man in Washington.
Is it a big story back there that you're in the Stanley Cup final? Have you heard from President Putin? How big is it over there?
Yeah, Vladimir Putin called me and wished me luck, and, now it's a joke.
They came in their thousands to this shrine of aviation to witness history replayed and in some cases bag it to take with them.
This is hallowed ground and I consider it sacred. I'm an aviation enthusiast.
No shortage of those on this rain-drenched day, among them movie star John Travolta and President Bush.
And on the day they did fly, just like today, the conditions were not ideal. But they went ahead anyway.
There's a Canadian-built jet trainer. Overhead, a Canadian contribution, a fly past by two snowbirds, here to mark the centennial of the Wright brothers' first flight.
It really hit home that hey, we flew 100 years to the day over the exact same site. It still hasn't totally sunk in, I don't think.
I often wonder if Uncle Orr fully understood the gift, the view he and Uncle Will would give the world from these beautiful sandy dunes on December 17th in 1903.
On that date, two brothers from Dayton, Ohio achieved what no one else had, controlled heavier-than-air flight.
Today it seems like such a modest achievement. Beginning from the point of that granite marker, the Wrights spent just 12 seconds in the air, a mere 120 feet to land here. And yet, even that short hop truly was, to coin a later phrase, a giant leap for mankind.
Countdown to Kitty Hawk.
A leap this team of aviators hope to replicate with their wood, cloth, and wire reproduction of the Wrights flying machine.
There she goes!
After a 2-hour wait, the rains finally subsided, and the replica flyer trundled down its runway, tantalizingly close to taking off before splashing into a mud puddle. Disappointing the pilot, but not the crowd.
Russian journalist Arkady Babchenko stunned the world yesterday, appearing on TV a day after being declared the victim of an apparent assassination. Today, he revealed new details of an elaborate ruse explained by the CBC's Moscow correspondent, Chris Brown.
The shock of his apparent resurrection may have passed, but Arkady Babchenko spent the day apologizing for making everyone think he was dead in the first place. Weirdly, he was presented with his own memorial that staff at the TV station where he worked had made for him. At a news conference, he filled in details of the hoax he had the starring role in. I made a shirt with bullet holes in it, he said. They used real pig's blood on me, with help from a makeup artist. As the scenario played out in front of his house, with police investigating an apparent crime scene, Babchenko says he washed up at the morgue. I sat wrapped in a sheet, he said, and then watched the news about what an amazing guy I was. Ukraine is treating Babchenko like a hero, even meeting the president, suggesting the sting generated hard proof of Russia's bad intentions. Whereas in Russia, the death hoax is being called a primitive farce. State TV spent the day deconstructing not just Babchenko's statements, but also Western coverage of the story, including our reports in the CBC that highlighted the ethical concerns many journalists have about faking news stories. On that point, Babchenko was blunt. The choice was, do you want to survive, or do you want to preserve ethics, morals, and cleanliness of your profession? I chose the option to survive. As for the man arrested, Ukrainian TV identified him as an employee of a German-Ukrainian arms manufacturer. They claim he was paid to line up the hit on Babchenko and dozens of other people.
Still, Ukrainian police have yet to reveal anything that directly ties anyone in Russia to the murder plot. Asked whether it could all be an elaborate Ukrainian setup, Babchenko said possibly, but just because he hasn't seen a signed order from Vladimir Putin doesn't mean the plot wasn't real. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
And still ahead, a much different story involving Vladimir Putin and why he may actually be cheering for Washington. The Washington Capitals, that is.
How long does it take from the period of time where you have an idea for a show till I see it?
It's very kind for you to think I have an idea for a show. But no, if I have, from the time someone pitches something till it's on TV is roughly 9 months, just because the animation process is so laborious that it takes about 9 months to finish an episode.
Which is a long time in TV terms.
Yes.
So how is it that the show, in any terms,
yes.
How is it that the show has maintained its ability to stay relevant when it's actually sort of in time distant from the things that we're watching every day in the news?
You know, it's funny. It's in a way I think we don't do stuff that is timely. Like we won't do a joke about whatever crazy thing Trump said this morning, whatever day this airs. That will be valid. But whatever crazy thing he said, because 9 months from now there'll be 7,000 other crazy things that will have happened. But we do 2 little rewrites along that 9-month cycle. And sometimes in the last rewrite, we can slip something in that's only a month away from the air date. But what I think is, I think the bigger picture about the show that's really been great for the show is that, characters never age. There's 30 seasons almost of the show, and you could turn on any season and be confused for any other season. And we try, I think, to write stories that are a little bit universal. So maybe some of the relevance just comes out of the fact that it's this evergreen and this constant, and it feels relevant even when.
But when the White House is arguably churning out comedic material for you all the time, is it hard to resist the temptation to kind of reference something?
I mean, that's what Twitter's for, I think, for individual writers and for Donald Trump himself. But it's hard to resist. But we just know, unless it's a big issue that is going to be around 9 months or a year from now, we just don't touch it in that specific sense. Stuff about like gay marriage, we'll do an episode on that, but nothing, about a tax bill or something like that, because it's just not going to be around.
I mean, obviously we have the Rick Mercer show, widely successful here. This hour is 22 minutes, but we don't have the late night comedic culture that is, like a bedrock now in the U.S. and it is driving a lot of the political conversation. Think about Jimmy Kimmel.
Right.
I mean, you're a Canadian who's lived and worked in the States for years now. Why do you think that isn't part of the culture here?
The thing about the States, it's just volume. There's so many shows, and they're all desperate for content, and luckily, the president has been very generous about providing content to all these shows. He's a real jobs creator. He's given all these comedy writers work. But I don't, I think just that in the States now, there does feel like there's a little bit of a shift where it's almost like these performers have an understanding with the audience that we all don't like Trump, right? It's this assumption where I think with previous presidents, the country was a little bit more split, 50-50, but now it feels like there's a bit of a license to really go a step further, because it's this, you feel like you're preaching to the choir to some extent. And that has maybe emboldened them a little bit, whereas previous, there was Obama, it was funny stuff about Obama, but I think you respected that half the country didn't like Obama.
When you talk about going a step further, I mean, there is a step too far, right?
Yes.
There was a writer for SNL who tweeted about Barron Trump right after the inauguration. She was fired the same day. Kathy Griffin famously held up this sort of mock head of Trump, and her career has really paid for it.
Yeah, I'll say I'm friends with Kathy. She will send an angry letter saying we are not friends. Her lawyers will be all over this. But I've sort of seen through her what's happened as a result of different people react differently and think this was obscene or too far. I didn't necessarily think it was too far at the time. I thought it was just an art piece. That was 6 months ago, and I feel like now, if that happened, I don't think that response would be the same, because I think this meter has moved as to what is obscene. And I still think, people that are innocents, like Barron Trump, and anyone that is, I'll just say, innocent, should not be dragged into it. But there's no way Donald Trump, of course, isn't innocent, and he says horrible things, and someone did something maybe counteractive to that. So anyhow, I think that meter has moved where that wouldn't be as obscene today as it was at the time.
I was limp. I was a limp noodle.
Did he say anything?
No. No, he said nothing that I could recall. I was in and out of consciousness.
Tonight on The National, Canadian Andrea Constand speaks publicly for the first time since the Bill Cosby trial. It was her case that led to his conviction on 3 counts of sexual assault. In her interview with NBC's Dateline, Constand said she initially didn't tell anyone about the assault because she thought no one would believe her. Cosby is due to be sentenced on September 24th.
Watch it. I can't see where I'm going, guys.
Also tonight, could Martha Stewart be pardoned by Donald Trump? The U.S. president told reporters today he's thinking about it after granting a pardon to conservative commentator and outspoken Obama critic Dinesh D'Souza. He pleaded guilty in 2014 to breaking campaign finance laws. On Twitter, Trump said D'Souza had been treated very unfairly by the U.S. government. He said today he also thought Martha Stewart was treated harshly. She spent 5 months in prison for lying to investigators about a stock sale.
Our two countries face a pivotal moment in our relationship in which it could be nothing short of tragic to let this opportunity go to waste. I'm confident we're moving in the right direction.
And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo sounding optimistic today about efforts to revive that planned summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. He spoke to reporters after meeting for a second day in New York with one of North Korea's top officials, Kim Yong-chol. Tomorrow, he's expected to deliver a personal letter from the North Korean leader directly to Donald Trump.
It is entirely inappropriate to view any trade with Canada as a national security threat to the United States.
Americans remain our partners, our allies, and our friends. This is not about the American people. We have to believe that at some point, common sense will prevail. But we see no sign of that in this action today by the U.S. administration.
And with that, Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland and the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau struck back, changed their tactic, and went hard after administration that is supposed to be Canada's closest ally, but maybe not so much anymore. Is this the beginning of a trade war? Is the relationship with our biggest trading partner in jeopardy? At Issue is back again to tackle that question this week. Andrew Coyne is in Victoria, Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, and Althea Raj joins us from Toronto. I didn't know that we'd have anything to talk about by Thursday, but lo and behold, the news gods were good to us, although maybe not so good for Canada, exporting, importing, and trade. Chantal, what did you make of the move, the retaliatory effort by the government today? What does it signal to you?
A number of things. The first, that the Liberals, the Liberal government was prepared for a day like today. So it was on the radar that there could come a morning or an afternoon where this press conference would take place. The second, this is the first time, I think, since the presidential campaign in the U.S. that we hear a bit more from Justin Trudeau about what he really thinks about the Trump administration. It's not sunny ways, really. And the third, if I were an American in the White House or the administration listening to that press conference, I would have understood in the subtext that the message Canada wanted to send there was, you can push, but we are not going to cave on NAFTA because of those tariffs.
Okay, so does that have any sort of impact, what we did today, Andrew, do you think?
We don't know. It will have an impact on our own consumers. The price of a whole range of things are about to go up. We're not the only country that was the target of these tariffs, and we're not the only country that's responding. We're doing so in concert with the European Union, and so it may have more impact that way. But I can't imagine anything that we're doing or the EU is doing as any kind of surprise to the Trump administration. I'm sure they would have anticipated all this, and they've done it anyway. And so one of the things I think we all have to go through the exercise of doing is saying this is not a normal administration. They don't respond in the same ways. They don't have the same incentives. They don't think in the same ways. And so we can't anticipate that the kinds of measures that might work with a normal administration are going to necessarily work with these guys. And the larger picture, of course, is, and it's amazing this is happening just on the cusp of the G7, is what this is really about is the United States is no longer at the helm or the leadership of the international Western democratic order. It is in some respects an adversary of that order, and the rest of that order is now trying to figure out how to contain the damage that Trump is trying to do to it.
Was it only a matter of time, Althea, before the government was going to have to get maybe a little less nice?
A little bit more candid?
Yeah.
I think they were hoping they wouldn't have to, but they've kind of run out of options. I mean, it was very interesting that the Prime Minister kind of let it slip at the end of his press conference today about the whole NAFTA negotiations, the fact that basically the White House had asked the PMO to ask to meet with Mr. Trump, and that the meeting was set for Wednesday, and that basically on Tuesday they called him with a gun, or trying to put a gun to Canada's head, and the Prime Minister said no. And I agree with Chantal. I think that was basically, the tariffs are a retaliation method for that. But I think, we have known that this is the direction the Americans were going in. If we'll recall, almost a year to the day, Chrystia Freeland stood in the House of Commons and talked about how the Americans had basically given up the mantle of world leadership, and that Canada and its allies needed to step up. And I think maybe it just took a year for them to realize that this is not a normal White House administration. Reason is not going to work. 3 times the Prime Minister said today, appealing to the White House to show some common sense. I thought the tone was really interesting today. The Prime Minister made it really personal, leading off talking about how, we have been in battles with you. We have died alongside for you, and now you view us as a national security threat. How does this make any sense?
There was also a moment. There was also a moment, Chantal, where he was asked, "Up until now, you've been able to make economic arguments to the president, and you've convinced him. And for some reason, whatever the argument was this time, didn't resonate. So, what tools then, other than this retaliatory message that we're sending back, what else can they possibly do? I mean, they've given all their time to this guy and this issue, and now this still happens."
So I don't think that they realized recently that this was a guy that was not like other presidents. I think they came to that realization early on, and probably after having walked away from the White House, having heard that we would tweak NAFTA and then heard what happened afterwards. They've known that for a while. Until this week, nothing had happened that would have justified today's press conference. We were negotiating NAFTA. The tariffs had not been imposed on Canada as a first step. So there was no point in doing what we did today. What can they do in the future? The only real effective tool that Canada may have remains the same, and it is internal pressure from economic lobbies in the United States on the White House. Otherwise, this administration, frankly, does not give a damn about what is said about it in a news conference on Parliament Hill or in Paris.
And one of the things that they're doing, Andrew, then is targeting specific states with specific things and issues, whether it be Paul Ryan's or Mitch McConnell's, in hopes that those people will then go to the president and say enough. Does that work?
Well, it's certainly the only game they have. I mean, to be fair, to give the government its due, they have been embarked on a strategy of trying to appeal to all these differing power centers around the United States, not just in Congress, but in the states, as you mentioned. There's a long-term battle here for not just economic pressures, but public opinion, I think, is also part of this.
Yes, yeah.
You know, if you look at the way this intersects with NAFTA, I mean, it's perhaps been clear for some time that the NAFTA talks, I think, are highly unlikely to reach a successful conclusion. And so therefore, you're talking about managing the failure of those talks, trying to prevent the failure of the talks from leading to the demise of NAFTA. Because remember, the president can give notice of withdrawal, but effectively the Congress has to pass or repeal legislation to give that effect. And so it becomes a question of who has the votes in Congress.
So this is all happening not only as the NAFTA negotiations are unfolding, Althea, but as a week from now, G7 leaders are supposed to gather in the Charlevoix to talk about issues that they agree on or try and come to some consensus to provide leadership for the world. So how does that happen?
Well, I think we kind of got a first look at it today. You know, Canada did not take a unilateral action. Our actions were complementary from Mexico's actions, from the EU's action. Everybody was basically doing exactly the same thing, trying to employ the same strategy. And now I think it's pretty clear to this government that while they may have tried to adjust the G7 agenda to appeal to Trump, you know, it kind of had controversial things like cleaning up the oceans and women's empowerment that aren't really important things like climate change. They don't need to wait for the Americans to get on side. They're not getting on side, so move without them.
So can we function like that, though, Chantal? I mean, can the G7 function like that? Can Canada function like that? Just sort of saying, okay, we'll just wait till he's gone? Or I don't know what the approach is.
This is a fair question, but let's agree that today the United States went after every single friend that they have in the world with those sanctions. It's not a Canada-U.S. thing. It's the U.S. That has gone. Japan has reacted. The European Union. Go down the list. There are no friends of the United States that were treated as friends today. So the G7 next week is really the G6 and 1.
Yeah.
So Andrew, go ahead.
Well, we used to talk about the G8 when we were trying to get Russia involved, and then that became clear that wasn't going to work, so it was the G7 plus 1. It's, as Chantal says, it's now the G6 plus 1. You know, as much as this is about Donald Trump and his particular neuroses, et cetera, it's also about the people around him, and it's about the people who support him. And this doesn't come from nowhere. There is an ideology afoot among large sections of the United States that sees the outside world as a threat, that thinks everyone's taking it for a ride, taking advantage of it, is you know, ganging up on it. And in some respects, having the rest of the world, you know, respond with these retaliatory tariffs, maybe they're necessary, but it feeds into that narrative. They are going to take from this. You see, this is what we were talking about. This is why we had to do this. That's a very strange thing for the leader of the free world, the United States, for that idea to take hold in the United States, but it very clearly has amongst a significant section of the population.
So a trade war is actually a good thing in some ways. Althea, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wonder if, you know, some of the relationships that Canada had fostered, if those people were still around, if, you know, Canada would have been spared this move. It seems like a lot of the allies that we had, that we cultivated for a year and a half, are gone. And maybe this is a result of that.
Chantal.
Yes, but does anybody last in that White House except the Hawks and the Falcons? So, and every time we go to the Canada could do this and that, we are trying to normalize a presidency that cannot be normalized.
That's a good point.
But it's still surprising, isn't it? I mean, weren't you still a little bit surprised today? Because I was, and I was certainly surprised by the language of the Prime Minister. Chantal, Andrew,
overdue, probably overdue language, and I think the language today. I've been critical of many of Justin Trudeau's news conferences. Sometimes it seems like he's blowing bubbles, and you just sit there and think, why am I here? Today they were on message, and I think they did a competent job of doing what they wanted to accomplish.
And they had two audiences they were trying to address. One was they've got this long-term battle for public opinion in the United States, but also clearly the public in Canada would be baying for some kind of response. Whether that's the right response in practical terms is another question, but politically it looks tough, and that's what the public would want.
Okay, thank you all. 2 times is never enough for me in 1 week, just for the record. I take you every day. Good news for political nerds just like us. At Issue is also a podcast. You get extra content and the main panel in podcast form every week. This week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Trans Mountain Pipeline, a new set of owners, which means stakeholders in BC can now deal directly with the federal government. What does that change? Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/The National.
And still ahead on The National, Russia-U.S. relations may be tanking, but Vladimir Putin has at least one reason to cheer Washington on.
sure, they produce great players. And you know what? I'm just here to watch, some great plays and all that.
Closes in, Eller to Ovechkin, score!
Oh, he's the hugest star in Washington. He's our man.
And New York might be a sightseer's dream on any night, but last night, crowds of people were holding out their phones and cameras, all to catch a glimpse of the same thing, a sunset perfectly aligned with the cityscape. Behold the magic of Manhattanhenge, a public pilgrimage for the Instagram inclined. Glass and steel canyons of a modern city linked by the event to an ancient monument. Stonehenge's sunsets and sunrises have long attracted druids and hippies. This new ritual was popularized by American celebrity scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson.
You can ask the question, is there a day of the year where the sun sets exactly along the cross streets of Manhattan? I just thought of calling it Manhattanhenge.
This kind of sunset happens twice annually in pretty much any city built on a regular grid. For instance, the spectacle of Torontohenge is in October and February, Edmontonhenge in September and March. Manhattanhenge comes in May and July, times when a city map becomes a celestial compass, pointing straight to a golden snapshot.
Because of his size, and particularly in this league, which is a really rough league, and I'll tell you are you scared for him at all?
No, Wayne has, if you watch him closely, there are very few times that he'll really get hammered. He seems to have eyes in the back of his head at times, but instead of forcing against the check, Wayne has the knack of rolling with the check, and he never gets hurt badly in that respect.
You're not scared?
No.
What he's found and what we found, that they're checking him a lot closer, and they're going to continue to check him. But I think he has enough brains, enough moxie to overcome all the checkers on him.
The number of goals he's getting and the number of points he's getting must surprise even you. I mean, it's impossible for a 16-year-old to do that in junior A.
That's something that we've never expected or dreamed of. We thought play September, come Christmas, that he would help our hockey club. Here he came to our training camp, we dropped the puck. From day one, he's helped our club and continued to score and score.
How much do you think, Wayne, when you're operating a play?
Well, when I'm out there, I try to think as far ahead as I can, even before the play develops. Try to think where the puck's going to go and where to be, And, when I go in on a goal, I think about everything else but scoring, I just go in there and like the other night in Ottawa, I was going to do something. I was thinking of it anyway, and all of a sudden, everything just went blank, and all of a sudden I looked up and the goalie was right there, and I just had to go around him. I was fortunate enough to score.
Is that instinct, you think, or what is it?
Part of it's instinct, but a lot of it takes a lot of practice. Not in the older age, but when you're younger, 4, 5, 6, even 10, 11, And I worked on it then real hard, and that's been paying off for him.
What do you want for him? You want him to be the next Bobby Orr?
Well, I don't think he could be a Bobby Orr, but whatever Wayne wants. And like I said earlier, as long as we can get his schooling out of hockey, I think both his mother and myself will, accomplish everything that all the time has gone into with him.
Right now, I want to play 2 solid years of junior A hockey and get my grade 12 or at least 13. And if I stay in junior hockey, go farther in school. But
university?
Yes, I'll be going to university for sure. But
even if you turn pro?
I don't know. That's too far ahead. I know that I'm going to grade 13. And after that, I'll make up my mind what I'm going to do.
Still 4 years away, too, so anything could happen in 4 years. And we had always hoped that as long as we got Wayne his schooling through hockey, we've pretty well accomplished everything that we wanted to do in respect to Wayne and hockey.
I don't know what's going to happen, though. I just hope that I make pro hockey.
Backstrom again. Closes in. Eller to Ovechkin. Scores!
That's the grade 8 making history last night. Alexander Ovechkin scored his first ever goal in a Stanley Cup final. 13 years he's been with the Washington Capitals, and despite some furious late pressure from the Knights, the Caps held on to win 3-2, tying the series. Now, Ovechkin will undoubtedly get a hero's welcome on home ice this Saturday for Game 3. And if you're not a hockey fan, I'll just say it's hard to overstate just how popular he is in that city, in Washington, which, again, to a non-hockey fan may come as a surprise, given his nationality and growing talk of a new Cold War with Russia. Lindsay Duncombe explains.
Let's go! In D.C., hockey has been an escape from head-spinning political intrigue. Thousands poured into the rink to watch Game 2 on the Jumbotron. C-A-P-S! And their hero is the undisputed czar of the swamp.
How big of a star is Ovechkin in Washington?
Oh, he's the hugest star in Washington. He's our man.
But even in this most patriotic of American arenas, signs of the superstar's dual loyalties. Yes, that's a Russian jersey.
You just look at that man, you don't need to know his name or anything. He's a Russian. He's got the teeth missing and everything. He's got the big bushy beard.
Is it a big story back there that you're in the Stanley Cup final? Have you heard from President Putin? You know, how big is it over there?
Yeah, Vladimir Putin called me and wished me luck, and, you know, now it's a joke.
Or is it? Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ovechkin are close. At Ovechkin's wedding, congratulations from the president were read before the celebration turned shirtless.
Should Americans be intimidated by Putin, or is he actually like a fun, nice guy?
Yeah, he's a nice guy, but no comment on politics.
Well, not quite, Ovi. Before Vladimir Putin's fraudulent re-election, Ovechkin endorsed a social media movement, #PutinTeam, online. In this 2014 photo, Ovechkin promotes a hashtag shared by Russian nationalists supportive of Putin's invasion of Crimea. To people who know Russia, none of this comes as a surprise.
The way that sports and the arts work in Russia is kind of a patronage system, and this was true in the Soviet Union, certainly, perhaps even more true than it is now. But given Alexander Ovechkin's age, it totally makes sense that he would be close with the Kremlin because he is a product of the state.
The surprise may be that as relations between the United States and Russia crater, DC hockey fans don't seem to care that their hero is pals with somebody many Americans see as a geopolitical supervillain.
No, I don't really care about that. Sure, they produce great players, and you know what? I'm just here to watch, some great plays and all that.
Closes in. Eller to Ovechkin. Scores!
This is one Russian they want to see visit the White House, as long as Ovi brings the cup. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
Now, Putin and Ovechkin share more than just love of country. Both have hockey in their veins, though their skill levels vary a bit. It was earlier this month in Sochi. Putin hit the ice with some former pros. It was an annual hockey festival promoting Russian sport. And it's safe to say, when it comes to skating ability, Putin is no Ovechkin. But as Russian state TV clearly shows, he can put pucks in the net, as long as the goalies don't work too hard. By the end of the game, Putin had scored 5 times, adding up to a dominant 12-7 win over a crack squad of amateurs. A regional governor and even a pro-Kremlin billionaire were no match. But worth mentioning, Putin did have some former NHLers, Pavel Bure and Slava Fedosov, on his team. That might have helped just a little. And the moment is up next. First, though, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Every afternoon, we take you inside our journalism and highlight some stories you may have missed. Today, it was the controversy in Denmark. Why another European nation is banning full-face veils. Subscribe to The National today. cbcnews.ca/The National.
Is your closet packed with stuff destined for the donation bin? Most of us barely even wear the stuff we have before we go out and buy something new. In fact, we're buying about 70 new garments every single year. So do the math. For a family of 5, that works out to buying a new piece of clothing almost every single day of the year. Donating your old clothes to charity might make you feel better than putting them in the trash, but the reality is nobody needs your old college sweats. It's called the clothing deficit myth. A lot of us think that when we donate our clothes to charity, they're actually going to someone in need. But it's more likely that your clothes are going to end up in the garbage. Every year, more than 25 billion pounds of textiles end up in North American landfills. Here's some of the reason why. We're buying 400% more clothes than we did in the 1980s. Stores are rapidly restocking. Some even bring in new clothes every other day. Experts say we can thank fast fashion for this. We can buy way more for way less. Those buying habits lead to millions of pounds of unwanted clothes in donation centers. Charities sell or give away what they can, but the rest is sold to a middleman, a company you've probably never heard of, with a warehouse the size of football fields, sorts and then distributes your unwanted clothes. That middleman sells those clothes to developing countries. Kenya was Canada's top customer for secondhand clothes in 2016. But forget one man's trash is another man's treasure. These countries, they don't need our cast-offs. What they can't use or sell ends up in landfills or burned. So why not just recycle our old clothes? Because it's super hard. Most of our stuff is made with blended fabric, so they don't break down easily. Take your favorite skinny jeans, for example. They're made with cotton and elastane. It's actually cheaper to make a new pair of jeans than take the material from your old ones and reuse and recycle it. And get this, nearly 4,000 liters of water go into making a new pair of jeans. So what can you do? Well, experts say even before you donate, you've got to find a way to give your clothes a longer life. So consider having a clothing swap. Maybe give your cast-offs to friends or family, someone who's going to get use out of it.
Tonight on The National, more evacuations in Hawaii as fast-moving lava threatens new parts of the Big Island. Overnight, lava from the Kilauea volcano was spreading so quickly that scientists say it was able to cover 6 football fields worth of land per hour. Because of that, officials are worried that people refusing to leave home may get trapped. So far, about 2,500 people have been displaced and at least 75 homes destroyed. An Edmonton man could be sent to the U.S. to face terror-related charges after a decision by a judge today to grant an extradition order. Abdullahi Ahmed Abdullahi is accused of helping to pay for his relatives to travel to Syria to fight with ISIS. The extradition order, however, does still need to be approved by the federal justice minister, and Abdullahi will have 30 days to appeal before being handed over to U.S. authorities.
So, turns out a long-lost painting by Tom Thompson wasn't missing at all. It was just collecting dust in one woman's basement. Glenna Gardner inherited the painting from her late father years ago. And get this, Sketch for Lake in Algonquin Park was auctioned off for over $480,000. But it took a push from her good friend to finally get the painting appraised. Their story is our moment of the day.
Well, I was just sort of dumbfounded. It was just a painting that we had in the house. I had it on the wall for a while, and then it got relegated to the basement when I moved.
She had a whole bunch of paintings stacked up, and so we were going through them, and she said, "Oh, and this was Dad's Tom Thompson." So I looked at it and said, "Oh, Glenna, you should get that appraised or something."
No one showed any interest in it at all, except for Marie.
So when I turned 70, she sent it to me in the mail with a letter to say, you know, if you're the only one that has any interest in this, if it works out, we'll go on a trip together.
Then Robert Heffel looked at it a little bit closer, looked at the back of it, and Marie said his eyes just lit up.
Down it goes at $400,000 last time.
I'm still in disbelief.
Wow, I'll say. So where are they going to go on their trip? That's what I want. $400,000, you can go anywhere you want. You could probably even buy your own city.
Yeah, I think they're doing a cruise or something. This was a gift from a minister in 1937 that her dad got, and he always said it was a Tom Thompson, but no one believed him. Clearly, because you would have done that before. He wouldn't have held on to it all that time. I don't know.
Now, the back and forth between these two is amazing. Firstly, 16 years it took of you take it, no, you take it, no, I'm fine. And eventually, Glenna sent it to her friend via UPS, she said, and was a bit miffed that it cost her $35 to do it. But they're still friends. It is amazing.
Check your basements.
Exactly, please. And that's the national for May 31st, or as we like to call it, Rosie Barton's birthday. Have a good one,
That's
pal.
right.
And good night.
Happy birthday.
Oh, no. Stop.
We can do it.